Hey everyone, welcome to another week of the Bookseller, brought to you by Eventide Entertainment. This week is the true crime review episode. I'm going to kind of give you some background information as well as my review of The Devil in the White City by Erik Larson. So I have quite a list of true crime books that I will be pulling from this category, and you can find those on my Goodreads. I actually made a category on my Goodreads account that kind of goes into maybe some of the books I'm going to be pulling from. You can also find me on there and recommend other books to me, so ones that maybe you have read or you would like me to read that aren't included in the viewer's vote, which I want to remind you is ending in only 2 more weeks. Get your votes in. Right now we have Norse Mythology by Neil Gaiman is what people have been voting for me to read in December for listener's choice. So if there's something else you want me to read, I definitely recommend you check out the link below. Do that survey, throw it in what you want me to read. If you want me to read something else, I recommend you start voting every day. You can vote more than once. So just make sure you hop on that. All right, so let's kind of talk about my involvement with true crime, why I like it so much. So a lot of the books that I've read in this category are true crime books based on serial killers. That's a really big part of this genre. But occasionally I have read other books that are on wrongful convictions of some individuals. And a book that I recommend to somebody would be Just Mercy by Brian Stevenson. This is a book that inspired me to look into a career field in law with a possible focus of wrongful convictions with organizations such as the Innocence Project. But I also have a very high passion for true crime and criminal law and investigations, which is kind of where I like to have both sides of the coin, basically. So I want to read books about wrongful convictions and kind of the process through that, maybe overturning that conviction, then letting that person go free based on DNA evidence or something else that came to light, maybe an alibi that hadn't come forward before. But I also want to read those serial killers and notorious murders that we kind of hear about in popular culture. Surprising, I have not read Helter Skelter. That is a big book in this category. It's probably going to be one that I'm going to be reading soon, just because of how popular it is. It actually surprises a lot of my friends that I've bonded with over this category, because they're like, wow, you call yourself a true crime fan and you've never read that book. And it's like, well, I only really recently got into this genre. I was more of a TV watcher, YouTube video kind of person where I would watch crimes that way. But I was never really into reading them because I had a instance where I read one of the books on Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka when I was like 16 or 17 that really creeped me out. Probably mostly because I was a little young to be reading something like that. Not that it's too young, 16, 17 is too young to be reading those kinds of books. But I was just going through a time in my life where I probably shouldn't have exposed myself to some of the crimes that they did. And for those of you that don't know those people, they're basically Canada's #1 worst, just terrible, terrible, terrible people. I believe Paul Bernardo is never going to get out of prison. He's in Canada right now, spending his life away. But what's really bad is Karla Homolka, who is his wife and kind of, partner in crime, is actually out of prison, and she got a plea deal for a testimony against her husband. And it ended up coming out to light after the plea deal that she had more of a role than originally thought. So just reading that book kind of really creeped me out. It still interested me. Again, it was at a time in my life that I probably shouldn't have been reading something like that. It has stayed with me for my whole life. But when I went to college, I started reading more of them because I still had an interest in true crime. I've always wanted to explore that genre again. And so I started reading more true crime books and realizing that, you know, I have the maturity to start reading them again. And that I kind of, instead of reading them in a sense of like the awe and the interest in how people can do that to other people, but more about the psychology and what makes a killer kill, or why are serial killers so popular in our society, like in pop culture. We have movies and shows about these guys all over the place. So definitely have a bigger interest in it now. And especially since I want to focus my career in law, I kind of want to explore that and pinpoint what direction I want my career to go. Do I want to go into criminal investigations, or even just investigations with like children, kind of helping that side, or doing wrongful convictions and trying to get a part of like the Innocent Project or things like that. So I'm hoping this subject and genre will allow me to explore that and see if I have the tact and willpower to have an interest in this without it affecting me, because it has affected me. Like I said, that book that I read when I was 16 wasn't something I should have read then, but reading it, I'd have read it again, and it wasn't as bad. Not that I'm desensitized to it, but I kind of go in with a different mindset now. So yeah. So a couple podcasts that I listen to on this subject are serial, lore, and serial killers. And those last two podcasts that I listen to are on a weekly basis now. They're really interesting, really well done, and they are on the kind of, at least the serial killer one is definitely kind of talking about those notorious killers. So you should check that out if you kind of want like just something to listen to in the background when I can't bring you my true crime episode, because as you guys know, I'm only doing this once a month, this podcast episode in particular. So kind of to fill up your void of whatnot, you should check those out. So a lot of the true crime books that I tend to get inspired to read on the person and the subject, I have to remember they need to shut it down before a particular time before bed, because I don't know about you, if I am reading a book or watching a show right before bed, or even trolling Reddit and reading things, that stuff tends to stick with me when I go to sleep. I don't really have that many nightmares anymore. I've luckily, I think I have more of a better skill at being able to pull myself out of dreams, knowing that they're not real. So that's, I mean, props to me for figuring that out. But so I don't really get freaked out in dreams, but I do have dreams and have had dreams where I've watched something really kind of scary and real and have had a dream about that subject. So it hasn't, again, it's not affecting me, but at the same time, with this kind of stuff, I do have to shut it down at a particular time, like right before bed. But the thing is, when you get interested in this stuff, you don't want to stop reading about it. And then you get tired and you pass out and you put your phone under your pillow, and then you have a dream that's just like, what is happening? Like, oh. But, yeah. So I just have to remember to do that. I don't have anything that's super intense. I do have a recurring nightmare from my childhood. That's probably the scariest thing that I go through. But the other ones where it's like something I've read, something I've watched, I'm usually able to kind of talk to myself in my dream and be like, this isn't real. Just kind of not enjoy the dream, but just go along with it. And if it becomes too much, pull yourself out of it. So I've been able to do that quite a few times. So something else I am super obsessed with right now in this genre is the show Mindhunters. It's a Netflix original. It was just released like a little less than a month ago. I want to say at the beginning of October. So good. It's one of the better true crime / murder, mystery, serial killer insight that I've seen in a really long time. It's also directed by, I believe, Fincher. He did Zodiac, about the Zodiac Killer. He directed that film, which was also a really good film. But he directs this show. And it's just really well written. It has some crime in there that you can kind of, it's not all about serial killers, but it definitely goes into the minds of serial killers. They interview different serial killers. Obviously, they're actors, but it's pretty cool. I would recommend that. So let's just take a quick break before I jump into this week's book, The Devil in the White City. We have some cool things to talk to you guys about that's happening in Eventide Entertainment, so make sure to stay tuned and wait for my review after our break.
Nerd Versus, Mondays at 9 a.m. on the Eventide Entertainment podcast feed.
There's nothing quite as satisfying as a good conversation with intelligent company.
Join comedian Don Smith every week as he sits down and talks with comedians, actors, filmmakers, writers, and everyday schmoes. It's The Life with Don Smith, Wednesdays at noon on 106.9 FM, and now available on the Eventide Entertainment podcast feed every Friday on Spreaker, YouTube, and iTunes. Are you into making music, videos, or podcasts? Are you a local comedic talent in need of some much-needed publicity? Are you a behind-the-scenes professional interested in audio-video production, graphic design, and public relations? Eventide Entertainment is actively seeking talents, clients, and professionals to help our business grow into something truly special. And we want you to be one of those. For more information, go to facebook.com/Eventide Entertainment or send us an email at eventideent@gmail.com.
Welcome back, and let's just jump right into my review of this week's book, The Devil in the White City by Erik Larson. So this was published quite a few years ago on February 11th, 2003. So I was 13, quite a while ago. I have heard things about this book through the years. I never gave it a shot just because at the time it wasn't a genre that I was super into, but I'm definitely glad that I gave it a shot because it was unlike most true crime novels I've read. I would even classify this, I think even Erik Larson kind of talked about this, that it is true crime, but it kind of reads as like a narrative nonfiction true crime. So a lot of time true crime books are just like, here's the facts, here's some evidence, here's some witness testimony, boom, 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 which I enjoy. I like the logical part of that. But at the same time, this was kind of interesting because it felt like it didn't feel like a real, this is hard to say, it didn't feel like a real book, like a real crime. But at the same time, that's what made it so good, was because it is all real. It read like it was a murder mystery or a suspense novel, when in reality, it's actually a true crime novel. It was just so well written in the way of very description and narrative focused. He took a lot of the letters, real diary entries, interviews about the subject, did a lot of outside research, and created this narrative. Everything in here is true. I mean, it's just really well done. So for those of you that want to kind of know about what's popular about this in pop culture, at least the serial killer H.H. Holmes, there's actually a movie in development for this book. So The Devil in the White City by Erik Larson is being turned into a movie, and it's in development for production right now, and it has been for, I want to say, at least a year or two, maybe 2 years. And Leonardo DiCaprio is actually going to be the star of, H.H. Holmes, and is also one of the producers for the film, which is awesome. I like that choice. I mean, I've seen quite a few. I think Shutter Island was one of his, like, murder mystery kind of movies, Inception. I really like him for the actor in this novel. So, pretty cool. Some TV shows about H.H. Holmes. There's a lot of documentaries on YouTube, really well done ones too, or even just like random facts you can learn. There's documentary on Netflix, which was okay. I definitely think I enjoyed the ones on YouTube a lot better. There's also a History Channel broadcast that happened this last summer, so 2017, and it was an 8-part limited time series called American Ripper, and it was on Holmes, and they were trying to link Holmes to Jack the Ripper case. There's been a lot of talk that maybe H.H. Holmes was Jack the Ripper, so they kind of talk about that. I've heard really good things about it. I don't have the History Channel. I am a cord cutter. I just have Netflix, Hulu, Amazon. If I really like a show, I'll just wait. Like with The Walking Dead, I can wait until that comes out on Netflix and binge it. I prefer that, especially with those kinds of shows. So for those of you that want to check it out, I haven't had the opportunity. I know there's, places you can look online to find episodes if you're really interested. I'm not going to advertise those, but you know where to find them. So another thing I believe I mentioned in one of my other episodes was that one of the characters from American Horror Story Hotel is actually loosely based off of Holmes. I believe he is like the hotel director in that show. Anyway, he was loosely based on Holmes, so that's kind of a little bit more pop culture-esque stuff for you. Okay, so let's talk about the book. So the book follows two distinct individuals, Daniel Burnham, who was the director and lead architect of the World's Fair in Chicago, and the other, the first known serial killer in America, H.H. Holmes. So this book, it alternates chapters on both individuals. There's some backstory and history of the fair and how it came to be through the direction of Daniel Burnham. This includes the difficulties faced in the building. Because it's such an extravagant fair, it took a lot of time, a lot of money. There was a couple instances where it looked like it wasn't even going to happen. A lot of accidents, a lot of accidental deaths, stuff like that. So that kind of, the book goes over that chunk. And that's Daniel Burnham's chapters. And then the other chapters are H.H. Holmes, and that gives information into like his childhood, how he was able to con people, and how he had a fascination with bodies and skeletons, and kind of building his persona and what he did. So the World's Columbian Exposition, which is what the World's Fair was known as, is also nicknamed the White City. So that's where the title comes in, The Devil in the White City. The devil is H.H. Holmes, the White City is the fair, la-di-da. So it was nicknamed the White City because of the buildings. They were all painted white, which was apparently so beautiful to behold that many people were moved to tears. Only one of the original buildings remains to this day, as the buildings were not meant to be permanent. This was a way to cut costs. You know, if they built a bunch of permanent buildings, can you imagine how expensive that would have been? So they created these buildings to be able to be taken down after the fair, which only lasted about a little less than a year. So the one building that remains is actually the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago, which, side note, it's one of the best museums I've ever been into, period. I very briefly, for a little bit of time in my life, grew up in Crystal Lake, Illinois, and I went to that science museum quite a few times, and oh my gosh, it was so good. I miss it. One of the best museums I've ever been to, hands down. So that's kind of cool to know that one of the original buildings from that World's Fair is the Museum of Science and Industry. So, of course, it's a permanent building now. They created it to mock the one of the buildings that was used in the fair. So it is the original building. They just had to build structure around it to make it permanent. So it looks exactly the same as it did back in 1983. Or, I'm sorry, 1893. Wow, dyslexic much. Anyway, so what makes me kind of sad in a way is the life's work of all these architects, all the individuals, all the people that were part of the making of this World's Fair. It's pretty much all been forgotten. How many of you even knew that there was a World's Fair in Chicago back in the 1800s? I mean, the only reason I knew about it was because it was part of our history when I went to school in Illinois. But otherwise, a lot of people I've talked to, they're like, what? Never heard of that. So that's kind of sad. But what remains is the serial killer whose name goes down in infamy that used the World Fair as a way to exploit and lure women to his murder castle of horrors. So all these men that put in all the work into building this World's Fair, over almost 25 million people went to see this, and that is a lot of people back in the late 1800s. Population growth wasn't as big as it is now. There's a lot of people. And the fact that all we can talk about now is the serial killer from that time rather than this grand fair that was like this huge thing to behold and magnificent, and it just kind of goes to show what is popular in our culture here, what we want to read about, listen about. So it was kind of beautiful that this book kind of brought to light how this fair was such a big thing, but yet now, 120 years later, nobody remembers it. Nobody knows what it is, but they sure as heck remember the serial killer. All right, so let's just take a pause. I'm going to talk about the serial killer in the book. I'm going to kind of give you some background information as to who he is and kind of talk about the castle itself that was built right by the fair. So, all right. Herman Webster Mudgett. He was born in May of 1861 and lived until May of 1896. He was better known under the name of Dr. Henry Howard Holmes, or more commonly, H.H. Holmes. He was one of the first documented serial killers in the modern sense of the term. While he confessed to 27 murders, only 9 could be plausibly confirmed, and several of the people who he confessed murdering were still alive. He is commonly said to have killed as many as 200, though this figure is traceable only to 1940 pulp magazines. Many victims were said to have been killed in a mixed-use building he owned, located about 3 miles west of the 1893 Chicago World's Fair, and said to have been a World's Fair hotel. Though evidence suggests that the hotel portion was never truly open for business. This would suggest that H.H. Holmes made a building disguised as a hotel, but in fact was a building full of hidden rooms where he could kill and torture people. So the construction of the property commenced in 1889 under the direction of Holmes himself. Holmes regularly hired and fired his construction crews, usually without payment. Holmes' frequent dismissal of the construction crew is suspect to having been intentionally done as to conceal the real horrors contained within the building, where only he knew what those rooms held. So this is actually pretty cool. It's an excerpt from the Chicago Tribune from August 18th, 1895. What is the castle like? But his castle, it now seems, as its labyrinths are explored, was his principal place of operation. And there it was that he planned and schemed, and where many beautiful women are believed to have met their end. With such a place at his disposal, containing hundreds of rooms, tortuous passages, secret chambers, trapdoors, dumbwaiters, with a rope for lowering down bodies into vats, a tank and a retort for disposing them, it is hard to understand why he went elsewhere to commit murders. Holmes himself had planned the building. Having no architect, and he took good care that the workmen were changed frequently, so that no one should know what the interior of the structure was like. He had airtight chambers and a room of steel lined with asbestos, where the wildest shrieks of his victims would be deadened. And he had a multitude of secret stairways and passages, through which he could effect his escape at any time. So I'm going to kind of talk about some of the floors in this castle of horrors. And remember, this was built around the time that the fair was going on. So those 25 million people that were visiting the fair, this hotel was only 3 miles away from that. So it was a really big destination for people to use to stay at, mainly just women. And the thing is, because so many people were traveling from out of town, that's why it's so hard to nail down how many people he actually killed, because it's so hard to trace women who came to see the World's Fair and just never went home. They don't know where she went, where, what happened to her. Was it at the fair? Did it, she find someone and run away? So that's kind of like the biggest thing, is to like, how many people did he really kill? Because nobody really knows, because it's so hard to trace so many of these women that disappeared. But it's said there was at least like 50 women or so that disappeared within this time frame, that were kind of suspicious of potentially being with Holmes. All right, so I'm going to talk about the second floor and the third floor of this wonderful, creepy hotel. All right, so the second floor was kind of like a labyrinth. It had apparently like 51 doors and 35 rooms. So more doors than there are rooms. Apparently a lot of these doors would like just be brick walls. They would kind of go down hallways that they didn't lead anywhere, that would trap women. The basement was kind of where a lot of the methods of body disposal happened. So a lot of these doors led to the like trap doors or closets that he could use to transport those women down to the basement. So in the second floor, there was long, narrow corridors that would only allow passage of one person at a time, and a number of walls formed blind corners, which created the perfect location for Holmes to stalk his victims. Once his victim was subdued, he had but to place them in a room of his choosing and end their life at his leisure, as there was plenty of rooms for Holmes to choose from. Holmes also had several dark rooms that could serve as a closet, which were likely used for other purposes. A variety of secret chambers dotted the floor, such as a windowless room with a network of gas pipes connected to it. The valves which controlled the flow of gas were discovered in another room. Another room was established as a hanging chamber. In one dark closet, it was discovered that there was a trap door. The trap door revealed a set of stairs connecting into another secret chamber. And then further down the hidden stairs, the passage ended at a wall. So if you can imagine, maybe the gas didn't fully work on you or something, and you're trying to escape. How do you escape? There's so many corridors, so many trapdoors, so many places that he could find you. You were trapped inside this museum of horrors, basically. Creepy. So the third floor, besides his offices, that's where he put a lot of his offices, there was only one room of note, and that was the steel vault. Pretty popular. If you hear people talk about Holmes, they talk about this room. So this vault was located beside his office. The vault was tall enough to stand and walk around inside. The steel walls were asbestos lined to absorb sound, and the door was secured with a top-of-the-line lock which only Holmes could open. The expense to build such a room would have been phenomenal. Included in the room was a gas pipe, supposedly included to light the room, but police suspected that Holmes would blow the gas light out through any one of the several pipes outside the vault, which pointed to the light. With the door sealed shut tight and gas freely flowing into the room, anyone shut inside would have quickly been asphyxiated. So this room was so small that a person could go in there. There was nothing else in this room other than this gas light, and you were able to stand in it, potentially turn around in it, but that's all it was. So basically, like, died because of lack of oxygen. All right. So the cellar, I don't want to give away the best parts of the book. So if you want to know about the cellar and all the methods of body disposal that Holmes had at his fingertips, I would encourage you to read this book, as well as do some outside research if you're really interested. It's pretty creepy stuff. Just to name a few things, there was a crematory, vats of acid, and one more thing I'll throw in for you is there was actually a rack used to be able to stretch bodies. That's just very limited amounts of things that were found in the cellar, as well as bones and things like that, you know, what you would normally find in your creepy cellar of a serial killer. All right, so that was some background information on Holmes and the castle itself, which is pretty prominent in the book. Hopefully that enticed you to want to read it a little bit. So the book itself was well done, very descriptive, had a great deal of research. You could tell that he did a lot of research in order to craft this book. Excellent use of mirroring between characters. Interesting to see one that's faded from memory in America and the serial killer lives on. Pretty sad that it's come to that. The fact that nobody remembers the World Fair, it's pretty sad, but they remember the serial killer that, you know, ran rampant there. Something else I really liked about this book is it didn't feel like a true crime novel because of the way it was written. And instead, it reads like a suspense novel. And this made it all the more eerie because everything that happened in that book was true and really did happen. So although you're reading it and you're like, oh, this is, you know, really well done, such a great murder mystery suspense novel. No, all of this happened. This guy did this stuff to people. We don't even know how many people he's killed. You know, the author uses his own confessions, letters, diaries. And what's interesting about his confessions is he lied about so much stuff. He never really admitted to anything. He admitted to like very few killings. And it's just, once you read the book and you kind of see like, you know, letters that people have written to Holmes saying like, hey, have you seen so-and-so? They said that they were going here. And you happen to be, you know, the person that they were talking to. Oh no, I haven't seen them. Da 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 da. That happened so many times, and because of the way that he was able to get rid of bodies, it's so hard to say how many people he actually killed. And because he never actually fully admitted to things, just makes it even worse. So the bad. Sometimes the flow of the book left me a little bored. I was wishing for more action sometimes. I did like... you know, you would think going into it, you'd be like, oh, I really am looking forward to just reading the serial killer parts of the chapters. Actually, reading those chapters of Daniel Burnham were really interesting. It wasn't super long as far as length of the chapters. It's not like you're like, come on, I'll stop reading about this guy. It just was slow in creation of the plot. Kind of left a lot for you to want to do more outside research yourself. Again, I love when books do that. I love that in American Gods. Any book that inspires me to research more about the subject, I'm down for. You'll at least get a 3. So I think it was difficult because this was a little slow in the flow. It's because a lot of true crime novels have those first-hand accounts, which make them more gripping and creepy, whereas this novel, because the killings happened like 120 years ago, we don't really have first-hand accounts. We have newspaper articles of people that worked for Holmes, but at the same time, you know, for us, the Zodiac Killer and Ted Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmer, those are all people in recent memory in our society, and also was happening more in the age of, you know, TV, technology was really starting to boom then, so there was a little bit more access to information. Whereas a lot of the information in this book is taken from either the first-hand accounts from the people themselves, that you can't really take what Holmes said at his word, because he was a notorious liar and con man. But also a lot of the information was taken from newspaper articles, which, I mean, yeah, they might have some truth to them, but at the same time, they're not going to have the kind of detail that we have nowadays for the serial killers we know in recent times. So, I did like the parallels between the two individuals. That time it felt pretty dry, as there was a lot of information about the architecture of the fair. It was interesting at some points, but, I don't really know that stuff. So at times it kind of felt a little lost on me, just because I was like, I don't know what this means. I don't really have the patience to look this up right now. But at the same time, I learned stuff, so hey. I wish that, given how much information there was about the architecture of the fair, I wish there had been even more information in regards to the construction and the architecture of the castle by H.H. Holmes. I had to do a lot of outside research to know that kind of stuff. So, overall, I loved this book. I thought it was out of the ordinary in comparison to other books I've read in this genre. If you're looking for a book that is true crime, but reads more like a suspense murder mystery, I would recommend you give this a shot. Personally, for me, it's a 4 out of 5. And, yeah, I enjoyed it. I'd probably read it again. I look forward to some of my friends maybe giving it a shot and letting me know what they think. I have read some reviews on Goodreads, definitely commented on a few because I agree with some of their points. But there's some spoilers, and I don't want to, spoilers is true crime. I just don't want to tell you guys about, the really cool stuff, because I want to entice you to do some outside research yourself. Like I said, we need people out there to build this community and make more of us more passionate readers. So, anyway, thanks for listening to me this week. This was my true crime episode. If you enjoyed this, please let me know. You can add me on Goodreads, give me some feedback there, or even leave comments on some of these. Pass along to your friends. Let them know that I'm, all sorts of genres of books. This next podcast, I'm going to be doing The Murder on the Orient Express by Agatha Christie. And also, I'm going to see the movie this weekend. So you're going to get both. You're going to hear my thoughts on the book and the movie. So make sure to check that out next week. I'll see you guys later. Bye.